I call this special meeting of Georgetown County Council to order. First item on the agenda is the invocation of the honors.
Do it. Let us stand. Holy God, we come before you tonight. First of all, Lord, to give you thanks. We want to thank you, Lord, for all the blessings that you have so richly blessed each of us with. And now, Lord, as this council prepares for the business at hand this night, we ask for your wisdom. We ask for your guidance that we would be good stewards over all these things and trust in our care. For these and all things we ask in your precious holy name. And God's people said, Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. There are no recommended changes to the published agenda. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve those as written.
Motion by Mr. Charlton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carolina. All in favor? Okay, the agenda is approved. Next we go to of ordinances. Ordinance number 20-18. Ordinance to make appropriations for ordinary county purposes for Georgetown County for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020. Ms. Administrator?
Good evening. We will have the Director of Finance approach the podium, please.
Okay, second reading here today. I want to let you know that we have an $87.6 million budget, which is 3.2% less than last year's. We have no overall millage increase, only the transfer of the millage between the general fund and the law.
Okay. And one more, economic development funds. There's the multi-county marketing fund and economic development fund.
So the economic development fund for the $361,000, that's just the normal operations of that department where we actually have personnel.
Ed, I'm not sure I'm asking this question right. It's two questions. I'm still learning this government accounting versus business accounting. What was our deficit if we had not used any of the fund transfers? Did I ask that right?
So in the case of the law enforcement fund, we have a transfer of budgeted of $51,000 because their fund balance came down fairly low, so we wanted to make sure that their operations were funded for 22. We had originally eliminated that annual transfer. You may recall we were talking about a number in the $700,000 range, but we eliminated that in an effort to move their millage that was under the general fund umbrella to under their own umbrella. Right. For more transparency in reporting. That's the largest one that comes to mind.
That's the largest one.
Right. We did use fund balance in general fund as well.
How much was that? 300 or so?
Million something.
1.1 million.
1.1?
Mm-hmm.
To rectify this problem, from keep doing this year after year, have we come up with a millage increase that we're going to need in order to rectify this problem, even though I know projections will be tougher with COVID-19? Or is that discussion has that discussion taken place yet?
Yes, actually, we had a great deal of discussion about that. Really because of the short time period that I've been able to be here, we have already agreed that we're going to start the budget process much easier, much earlier in next fiscal year. So we will have a plan going forward next in 21 forward to be able to reduce that fund balance usage significantly. That is certainly one of the goals that I've set for us as we move forward.
If, at the current rate that we're using the fund balance, and I know you might be looking at reducing it year to year until you eliminate the usage of it, and we get back on better sound footing. Are we looking at something like a 3-year or a 5-year plan? Do you have a feel for it? I know you hadn't thought that far out probably. I don't want to put you on the spot. That's a tough question to answer there.
I would like to say a 5-year program, but I'm pretty ambitious. I'm going to aim for 3.
Okay, that's good. 3 years passed by just like that. Thank you, Ed.
Any other questions from council? In that case, I'll entertain a motion, and we will need to amend it to incorporate the proposed text since it was introduced by title only in first reading. Can I get a motion? Okay, well, we'll get a motion to approve, get a second, then we'll get then you can make a motion to amend it.
I second the motion.
Okay,
Chairman.
motion by Mr. Goggins, second by Mr. Newton.
I'll make a motion we amend
To incorporate the text.
To
Motion by Mr.
proposed
Newton.
text.
Is there a second for
Second.
the amendment? Second by
Second
Mr.
amendment.
Carolina. Back to approving the amendment. All in favor of approving the amendment? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Now back to the main motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Ordinance number 20-18 is approved on second reading. We move to...
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
prior to us proceeding, may I just make a statement?
Say again?
Prior to us proceeding to the next item on the agenda, may I just make a statement regarding the budget?
Certainly.
Thank you. And to Chairman Thomas, council members, just a brief word regarding our proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Thanks to Administrator Christian and her team for deriving a balanced proposed budget for us to present to the public and serve as our operating blueprint. Thanks for ensuring therein that funding exists for our essential services. As you are aware, those essential services are performed by people we consider essential, thereby making them essential employees. I understand we are in tight budget times and no COLA is reflected in this budget. I think we clarified that at our last meeting. I understand also that a blueprint sometimes calls for a change order, but things sometimes change that was not initially prepared for or thought of. I believe that we are receptive to change when that opportunity presents itself. As such, since we have essential services being performed by essential employees, it is essential that we look at their wages and ensure that they are essentially being paid livable wages, whether part-time or full-time. We should look at establishing a minimum wage that's livable for all of our employees, not just those at the top. We have a staff of talented, considerate, consistent, and dedicated employees. A possible budget change which may assist with this can be in law enforcement. No, I'm not proposing or insinuating that law enforcement budget should be cut. I'm simply stating that we need to take a look at incarceration for nonviolent offenses, such as telephone harassment, first offense, civil possession of marijuana, or even possibly unknowingly passing a counterfeit bill, etc. And find ways to avoid incarcerating those individuals and still mete out equal justice. The possibility of citations without incarceration or bond hearing notices without incarceration can be an immediate start in cost reduction in detention center operation. Less incarceration means less prisoner uniforms, less meals, and even possibly less medical expenses, because once one is within the detention center, they are subject to the medical benefits that the county provides. We would be responsible for paying for them. We will be able to utilize those proceeds in other areas, such as maybe livable wages. So Chairman Thomas, Madam Administrator, and my fellow councilpersons, I ask that the first opportunity we get to make adjustments to our budget.
Okay, next we move to ordinance number 20-25, an ordinance to repeal and replace the Georgetown County Solid Waste User Fee Ordinance in its entirety. Ms. Administrator?
Mr. Funny, will you approach the podium, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, Madam County Administrator, tonight I stand before you to present our proposal to amend the current solid waste ordinance. This year we have took the liberty of considering the 16-year-old ordinance that we have now, and working with our county attorney, we have made some changes to the ordinance. One of the things that we have done, we tried to make the ordinance a lot more easy to administer and make it easy for staff to do their jobs as well. With the help of our county administrator and our county attorney, we have moved a lot of the minor issues that were included in our ordinance before to a regulation status, something that we could administer on a yearly basis through the county administrator's office. Some of those things that we moved out of the ordinance will be discussions regarding roll-off containers, event recycling services, transactions that we conduct at the landfill, statements that we conduct at the landfill, the waivers that we approve for various events in the county, how we handle the haulers on our site, how haulers would clean up their equipment on our site, and also the review of our household fees as well. We had some discussion about how we can reimburse people who have paid household fees that were not legally required to do so. Those are the items that we are proposing and recommending that will be moved from the ordinance to a regulation for our staff to administer. The other changes that we made to our ordinance, our proposing, has to do with our fees. We want to streamline our fees and make it clear for the types of waste that we're collecting in our landfill. We want to make sure that we charge for any special handling fees that we may encounter, and that those fees are something that staff can easily discern at the scale house where we charge our haulers. One of the things that we have done, and tonight we presented to you a revised copy of the ordinance on your desk tonight on section 8.25, I believe it is. It talks about late fees. And there was a lot of back and forth through the years of how to deal with late fees and how to charge interest rates and resumption fees, and we have attempted tonight to make it a lot easier for our users to understand what we're trying to do and try to make sure that they don't have late fees. But this effort was being proposed to help our staff also to administer that as well. One of the major things that we are proposing tonight is that since 2004 we have enjoyed landfill fees, tipping fees of $35, and we have done several financial analysis with our consulting engineers to determine what the actual cost for operating the landfill. And it was determined that through our financial study that the cost for, the true cost of disposal is actually $45 a ton, as opposed to $35 a ton. And tonight we are proposing that the fees for, tipping fees for commercial tipping will be modified from $35 to $45. We believe this would help balance the cost that's assigned from household fees, and those fees would not be subsidizing the commercial solid waste disposal. Basically, this is the idea of make sure that those persons who are using our landfill, they are paying their fair share for doing so. Some of the impacts that we've been experiencing at our landfill is over the years that we've been entertaining customers from outside of Georgetown County, and we also have strengthened our ordinance this time to allow our center operators to ensure, or at least try to minimize people from other counties using our facility by giving them some authority to if they suspect that people are using it that shouldn't be using it, should be able to ask for identification. We also have provisions in this new ordinance to make sure that our FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests are now moved directly to our administrator's office through our PIO, and also we think that will help minimize any conflicts that we've have experienced. Those are the changes that we're proposing for the ordinance number 20-25, and at this time I'll be glad to try to address any questions that you may have regarding the proposed ordinance change.
Any questions for Mr. Funny?
Ray, I have just a couple. For anyone that hasn't been out there and toured the landfill site, it's actually a remarkable operation they run out there, and Ray and his people are to be commended on the job that they do. I had the opportunity to go through there, and I was very impressed with what went on. And it seems like a simple operation. You carry your debris out there and it's done with, but that's not the case. Ray, besides the tire problem that we have, and I guess most landfills have the same problem, where you can't charge what it actually costs for a tractor tire, so to speak, because you don't want to. If you charge too much money for it, then it ends up on the side of the highway, and you're gonna get it anyway with no fee. Is there anything besides the tires that we're faced with? It's kind of like this, we're going to lose money on it and there's nothing you can do about it?
Well, we do have we have another item, electronic waste, that we have to handle and dispose of. We cannot, because of state law, dispose of electronic waste, computers and monitors into our landfill. So we have to hire a contractor to first hire staff to build them up and ship them to, most times to North Carolina, to a manufacturing operation that handles those kinds of things. That's an expense that's really been burdensome over the years. We also have household hazard waste material that we collect on a regular basis, but we do have household hazard waste collection at least twice a year, where we invite the public to come out and bring out those household hazard waste material, and we can collect them and we can compile them and we can prepare them for shipment as well. So those are two things that we have to plan for, in addition to the tires that we can't charge the kind of dollars that we would like to because of the situation that you just described. And so we do have those challenges.
Thank you, Ray.
Ray, to go up to the $45 per ton tipping fee, how does that compare with other landfills? Is that a competitive price compared to other landfills within proximity to to our location?
Yes, sir. That price is in range of those in our area, particularly Horry. Horry is less than 45, but Berkeley is more than 45, and we think our cost is competitive, and we shouldn't have any loss of revenue because of tipping fees, particularly since we had not increased our fees in 16 years. I think most haulers would recognize that and understand the cost of doing business over time does increase, and we certainly have had our increase in cost at the landfill.
Okay, thank you. Also, do you have an estimate of what the additional revenue generated from that increase would be?
Yes, sir. We do have an estimated value. I don't want to quote it tonight, but I think it's $243,000. But I need to verify that.
Just an estimate, that we are on the positive end of it, of anticipated revenue.
Ed's going to check right quick and see whether he has that number handy. I didn't bring that with me.
Any other questions for Mr. Funny?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ray, how are we doing with the recycling of the metal cans and things of that nature that could be sold, I guess? How are we handling the recycling at this point?
We still have a very robust recycling program. We're collecting plastic, cardboard, glass, metals, and the market right now is a little soft for cardboard, but we do have a very active program at the landfill where we, collect and we process them at the MRF facility, and it's doing a good job in regards to reducing our consumption at our landfill, and it's not a break-even operation, but it does reduce our airspace in our landfill, which is very expensive.
Yeah. One other thing, as Ray and Everett mentioned about the tires, do we grind those up? How do you handle a tire when it gets in there, especially when, think about, car tires are a little smaller, but coming off the farms and some of the bigger tires on the trucks, 20-inch tires, do we grind those up, or do they go into fill, or how do you do that?
No, sir. We actually have to pay a contractor to come to our landfill to pick up those tires. And that's how we dispose of tires, vehicle tires, tractor tires, off-road tires have to be, and they're all charged on various rates as well. And so that's an expense that we incur as well.
So they're not put in the landfill, they're given to somebody else to go recycle them?
Yes, sir. Tires are not permissible in the landfill.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Just to answer your question, sir, according to the revenue projections, we anticipate $422,000 of increased fees.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion. Note that it was introduced by title only last time, so we'll need to amend it to incorporate the text.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve ordinance number 20-25.
Motion by Mr. Newton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Morant. Need an amendment? Mr. Newton?
Make a motion that we amend the proposed text on ordinance 20-25.
Motion to amend by incorporating the proposed text. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Johnson. Okay, we move to a vote on the amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? And moving back to the main motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Ordinance number 20-25 is approved on second reading. Next, we move to ordinance number 20-26. an ordinance to earmark and set aside excess 2014 capital project proceeds.
Mr. Bryant?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, good evening. Hope everyone is doing well. I'll try to get through this quickly. I know everybody wants to hear about the hurricanes next. Brandon has the great stuff tonight, and we all have the dull stuff. But this is an ordinance that will address the 2014 capital project funding that is surplus, and it will also make sure that the original projects, such as the Winyah Bay dredging, is fully funded and that money is set aside for a future date. So real quickly, if you look at Section 1, what this does, Section 1 will take from the 2014 regular collections $6 million for the Winyah Bay dredging. It will set it aside, and that will fully fund the portion of that project. It will also take from 2014 collections $1.5 million, and it will disperse that to the town of Andrews for their Andrews Fire and Police Complex. That will fully fund that original amount as well. And it will also take from the 2014 collections, it will identify and set aside $200,000, which is estimated to complete the actual electric and construction portion of the substations that are remaining, which I believe there are 4 that the buildings are either here or have been ordered. The property is all purchased. It's just a matter of having those erected in the next couple of months. If you look at Section 2, Section 2 deals with the 2014 surplus collections. What this ordinance, what that section will do is it will take money from the surplus that you will vote to approve tonight, and it will disperse that when appropriate for the following projects. There is a $1.5 million supplement to the town of Andrews Police and Fire Complex. There is a Georgetown Technical College Advanced Manufacturing Center. The county's portion of that center was $1.5 million. The total cost of that center, which you've all toured, was $15 million. The surplus in this ordinance will also fund Phase 2 of the Georgetown Inner Harbor Study, which will be done through Coastal Carolina University, that to the tune of $200,000. And then finally, with this ordinance, you will be approving a $841,353 Economic Development Administration grant match. This is a EDA grant that's worth $4.5 million that will fund much-needed improvements in the Front Street and Constitution Park area of the city of Georgetown, also Orange Street, which is they're calling the El Cerro area, and also in the Queen Street area. And again, I would like to reiterate that that is a grant match. That grant, they are in the second phase of that grant, the city of Georgetown is. It is looking likely, but the award will not be made until the fall, so these funds will not be dispersed only if that award is made. If that award is not made, these funds will not be dispersed. So it is exactly a grant match. If there is no grant, this will not be funded as a match.
How much was that match?
800, the match 841,353. The ordinance also points out that these surplus collections, the disbursement to Andrews, the Georgetown Technical College Advanced Manufacturing Center, the Phase 2 study, and the EDA grant match will all comport with the requirements under the Capital Project Sales Tax Act as allowable projects. I would like to point out also that that will leave you with a balance of approximately $8.5 million in surplus. You'll recall previously that we discussed formulating some sort of a policy for council to consider in the future projects that these funds can be used for, instead of a kind of a haphazard and you're all hit individually with separate projects and ideas, that there be some sort of a concerted effort and procedure wherein you take another stab at this later on, where projects in some sort of a policy considerations are provided to you, and you can take that and kind of identify what you think would work and what not would work. So that would be the next step for us in the next few months, is to come back with you with some policy considerations after we seek input from you all. So that is the extent of the ordinance, and that is what it will do. If you have any questions about the content, please let me know and we'll try to answer them.
Mr. Chairman, Wes, we're going to, what was on the referendum that folks had voted for, that will be completely funded. Some of them haven't been completed, such as the dredging. That money's going to be set aside for that purpose.
Absolutely. So we made certain that for Winyah Bay dredging, that money will be set aside in a separate ledger account. It will, and this is done by ordinance, so this has the full force and effect of law. It cannot be spent until this body comes back and appropriates that to a project. It may not be the same project as originally conceived, but the hope is it will be some form of dredging down the road. So we're sort of just taking a back seat for that, putting that in the back seat for now.
And then the surplus, with the surplus we're talking about, you'll come back to us and identify some projects, and the council will decide.
What the plan is right now, that's right. What the plan is right now is above and beyond the 4 surplus projects that are presented to you in Section 2, we will come back to council with some policy considerations, maybe some guidelines, and let you folks kind of dialogue and sit and tell us, how you want projects to be brought to you, what types of projects you want to be brought to you, or just sit back and wait, for a certain amount of time before we address it again. But it's kind of an open, fluid thing right now. But the next step for us is we're going to come back to you and say, here are some considerations for guidelines, for which you can give to interest groups and your constituents if you so be it, if you want projects to come before you in the future for the remaining $8.5 million in surplus.
Okay.
So we will be entertaining suggestions from citizens.
Well, that's totally up to you. And that's what we're going to come back and kind of hash that out at a later date. So it won't be haphazard, but if we would like to maybe come up with a process that you all like, to where maybe that is a consideration, or they come directly to you and then you come to the council with the project or that sort of thing. But we'll kind of start emailing around soon and getting your feedback on how you would like that process to go. We just need some sort of a guidance, a benchmark for us to be able to, cull these together, get them in front of you, and that sort of thing. So.
Or it could be that we don't spend any of it, and
You absolutely could not spend any of it. So it's totally up to you at this point. So all the original projects, as the voters conceded, have been fully funded, and this is true surplus money.
We just needed to get past this first step. Any other questions for Mr. Bryant from council?
Some comments. I'm not sure if these are appropriate now or we wait until a motion is made, but the economic development grant match and the Inner Harbor study, I think, are reasonable projects, so I'm not criticizing the merits of those projects. But I would point out that these have been added since the first of the year. In the case of the drainage project, it's been added very recently. And I object to us cherry-picking the surplus ahead of actually developing a policy and a selection process for how we can expend those surplus funds. We'd agreed long ago that we reluctantly agreed that we would add an extra $1.5 million to the Andrews because of legal considerations. We had made a commitment long ago for the Ori Georgetown Technical Advanced Manufacturing Center project, but of the allocation that we've got here, all of these projects are municipal based. None of them are going to the unincorporated parts of the county. And the Inner Harbor study and the economic development grant is over $1 million, which is 20% of that total. So I think we're getting the cart before the horse. Quite frankly, I think we could very quickly develop a list of projects if the goal is to spend the surplus. our past administrator advised us to actually roll the surplus into the future sales tax. And one thing I would ask council to consider is that if we expend these funds in a rather haphazard manner, I think it could influence future sales tax voting efforts. I just think we need to proceed with caution. We need to have a process. And again, think some of these have kind of sneaked under the wire here without a process. And that's my objection. I don't object to the specific projects or, again, the merits of them. But other parts of the county deserve consideration too. The voters didn't vote on these specific projects. And, we're kind of piecemealing the surplus, expenditure of the surplus here, and I think that's a problem.
And I'd
Any other
like
comments
to,
from council? Okay.
one
Mr.
other,
Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment in reference to Mr. Goggins. The city, first of all, as other parts of the county, supported the referendum. And they have an opportunity to receive a $4 million grant. And that grant is dependent upon a match. This may be a short notice, but when we think in terms of what it's going to accomplish for the city of Georgetown, I think it's to our advantage to accept this particular item. And we will have the opportunity to deal with the balance of the funds. This is the business district, and it's my understanding that some businesses have experienced problems because of the drainage, and we do not want to lose our businesses that are there. So I think at this time that even though it may be well, it's really not a short notice, at least I don't think so. But in terms of a business venture, I think it would be wise for us to accept this.
may I make a comment?
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
May I make a comment?
Caroline?
This is in regard to the town of Andrews and the 1.5 million that was initially earmarked and the additional amount. Going forward, when we identify projects, I feel that we should be very specific on what the use of the money is going to be. Because at this point in time, when we have had quotes from the town of Andrews for their project, it's about almost double the amount that we are proposing. And consideration and dialogue with the mayor and his city council, concern is that the town continuously provides support to county fire and rescue departments outside the town limits. So my concern, as I'm saying now, is that going forward, that we be very specific on the usage of the funds from this, because it leaves open questions on what did you mean, we didn't understand that, we took it to mean this, but we must be very, very clear in what this money is going to be utilized for.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Mr. Carolina.
Mr. Chairman, I think from what our attorney has basically mentioned is that he, along with staff, want to get together and establish some guidelines and proposals for us to take a look at to make a decision as to how these future funds should be spent. I think as the ordinance is written now, it somewhat assists us in being able to dispose of the surplus, because obviously there are some legal requirements that are necessary for the surplus disposal. So I think some of the funding that's being recommended in this particular ordinance would kind of take us to the point where we'll be able to spend those surpluses. As far as the funding for the city grant match, you're looking at a facility that basically serves the entire county. I mean, the entire county benefit when it comes to the city, so it's going to help to alleviate some of the malfunctions within the city drainage system. Then that may be a feasible expenditure because it benefits everyone in the county. I don't know anyone in the county that does not ever come to the city of Georgetown. And besides, it's the county seat, so it may be a feasible expenditure there. So as far as the ordinance goes, I think it assists us in being able to dispose of the surplus. And also, I think it's a feasible expenditure for the betterment of the entire Georgetown County. But again, staff and council looking at coming in with some guidelines for the future expenditures. So I think that's really good, and that may resolve the issues that we are contemplating now.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I don't object to the project, just the process. And again, the order in which we're proceeding.
And I agree with the guidance on that, and certainly staff will take care of that.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Steve that you know, the projects are well deserved and need to be completed. But the process that we've taken, we have somewhat put the cart in front of the horse. And if there's any chance we could slow down and take a look maybe at these last two and can come back to them with a agreed upon process, I think everybody would be in agreement to. Not saying that these projects will not be completed or we will not fund them, but it's just the procedure that we're going through right now where we got a little bit of ahead of ourselves.
Well, I think we need to pass this as a package, and it gets us through the hurdle of allocating some of the first tranche, if you will, of the surplus funds. And I think if we it should be passed as this whole package instead of trying to pick it apart first.
Well, I think that's the point. If this is a package, I think I think it needs more discussion and more deliberation. But again, the merits of the projects slated for Georgetown. I'm pro-business. Drainage problems need to be fixed. I get that, and I support that. But the process leaves me a little bit concerned.
Well, I think we'll fix the process from here out. How's that? All right, I'll call for a motion on ordinance number 20-26, and realizing that it was introduced by title only and will need an amendment to incorporate the proposed text.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve ordinance number 20-26.
Motion by Mr. Morant. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Johnson. Need an amendment?
Chairman, I move that we amend ordinance number 20-26 to incorporate the proposed text.
Motion by Mr. Moran on an amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carolina. We'll go for a vote on the amendment. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The vote on the amendment is favorable. We move back to the main motion. All in favor of the main motion? Any opposed? The motion passes.
That's 4-3.
Ordinance number 20-26 is approved for second reading. Next, we move to reports to council. 2020 hurricane season outlook. Mr. Ellis.
Chairman Thomas and council members. As you all are aware, hurricane season began on June 1st. We've got a very active preseason this year. We've already had 2 named storms preseason, with a third storm coming in after the beginning of the June 1st start date. Currently, the 2020 forecast outlook provided by the National Hurricane Center and NOAA calls for a 60% chance of an above normal season. I know that makes everyone feel real warm and fuzzy given our past 7 years of activity. Current forecast is calling for 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 of those being hurricanes, and 3 to 6 of those being major hurricanes, which are Category 3 or above. Obviously, our planning efforts and preparations for this season have been compounded by the COVID-19 situation. It's brought a lot of challenges our way, but we are prepared and we are ready. We have been in close coordination with our partners both locally and at the state level. We've initiated several planning initiatives, and I'll go through a few of those, which you should have before you. Our emergency shelters will look a lot different this year. Obviously, in a COVID environment, we have to account for many different situations, one of those being the social distancing aspect. So we're going to anticipate reduced capacities for our shelters, but this really shouldn't impact us greatly given our history with sheltering in Georgetown County. We typically are well below our occupancy capabilities, so we feel very certain that we will be able to meet the needs of our citizens who seek shelter in these emergency shelters, even in a COVID environment with reduced occupancy capabilities. Evacuees will see pre-screening prior to entering a shelter this year, so we will be doing all the COVID screening ahead of time as they come to the facility. This will be conducted by the shelter workers and shelter management staff. We'll also provide for additional cleaning and safety practices to include additional cleaning stations, as well as PPE, face mask, and other items that are needed to provide a safe work environment and a safe living environment in those shelters. There will be isolation areas that are set up as well. This will be for anyone who needs to be separated from the larger population for various different reasons. So we'll have space available for those as well. Other initiatives and activities that we're taking to be more prepared for this coming season, given the COVID-19 situation, is we're adjusting our Emergency Operations Center staffing capabilities. Obviously, we're going to try to reduce that and do more with less. We have a strong team in Georgetown County. They're very seasoned, they're very capable, very competent. So we're going to reduce where we can, trim the fat, and bring in only those essential folks if we have to, so that we can be successful and protect our county and our citizens. Our final initiative has been through public outreach and education. We've partnered with Jackie and the PIO staff and different folks that she has supporting her efforts. We've really embraced technology, as we all have, through a virtual sense. We're producing several videos that we can prepare and push out for different preparedness topics this year, as well as different preparedness initiatives that we can engage the public on through social media and other avenues moving into the season. We're really leveraging our preparedness initiative this year, which is don't wait until it's too late, prepare today, and we're encouraging our citizens to do so. We want to inform them of where their evacuation zones are, as well as best practices for them moving forward. One being, if you're going to evacuate, please consider going out of your evacuation zone with family and friends that live outside of that evacuation zone. Pretty much our update in a nutshell, subject to any questions that you all may have.
Mr. Chairman, with what we're hearing a lot from the folks on the neck that go north, we're running into Horry County, and of course all the traffic is there. Going south, we run into the Charleston issue down there. One thing that comes to mind, people want to stay to the last minute to protect their homes, and I happen to be one of those people to do that. Would it make sense that folks are down here on vacation, maybe to put a 48-hour window there that they need to move out prior to when we know that we're going to be getting a hit? The folks that are here in the hotels, and especially up on the neck, to move those people out, would that be possible?
We will work with those realty companies and other entities and help to prepare them for the season. We also coordinate with them closely as a storm is impending. The evacuation order is an order from the governor's office, so we only make a recommendation to them as to what areas we want to evacuate concerning our evacuation zones. But we do encourage them early and often, and we work with those realty companies to try to encourage them to move their folks out ahead of time. Yes, sir. We can definitely enhance that moving forward into this season.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
All right, thank you.
That brings us to the conclusion. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment before we
Sure.
adjourn? Firstly, this is to commend all participants that took part in the Justice Protest Walks in Paulus Island, Georgetown, and Andrews, young, old, black, white, Hispanic, Native Americans, no violence. As for racism, let's be anti-racism. Let us support our law enforcement agencies to ensure respect and protection of all people. Just wanted to make that statement tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Carolina. I think we'll consider a resolution at next council meeting to do the same thing.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move, Mr. Chair.
We are adjourned.